Well, hey, everybody, this is Ryan J. Pelton, your host of The Art of Paying Attention, where paying attention is as Mary Oliver once said, our proper and endless work. Well, hey, everybody, it's so good to be back with you today. It has been way too long. I've been vacationing. I've been on sabbaticaling. I've been taking a break, taking a breather. I've been working on some projects. And one of those projects is right in front of you was people saying, hey, Ryan, you need to do video. You can't just do audio. All the cool kids are on YouTube. All the cool kids are getting on the video stuff. Well, I don't know how to do video. I'm new to video. It felt like a headache to do video. But today, my episode is not only on audio, if you're listening to this on the podcast, but it's also on YouTube. So if you go to Ryan J. Pelton at YouTube, you can find the video interview of me today. And so this is an experiment. And I just want to say, when I interview my guest today, Christian Ray Flores, who is a refugee who became a rock star, you're going to love this episode, by the way, is I look like I'm in a hostage video. I don't look well. And Christian has an amazing studio. And I recorded this a couple months ago on Zoom, and so my setup wasn't very good, but I am remedying the problem for future episodes. I'll have to get through some of the bad ones first, at least in the interviews. But yeah, we're going to try some video and see how that works, get it out on the YouTubes. And I'm also doing some other content on the YouTubes. I got some other projects launching. If you haven't checked out the coaching stuff, mentoring stuff on my website, go check that out. Substack, all the good stuff. But enough about me. I want to get to my interview with Christian Ray Flores because he was a refugee and became a rock star, and he shares his story, and he has an amazing inspirational story, and he is going to help us in your creativity, in your leadership, in your life, help you pay attention to what matters most. So welcome to audio and video. It's pretty exciting, at least for me. Maybe you, maybe two of you. Let's get into it. Well, Christian, it is so good to have you on the show today. And one of the things I love to ask our guests to kick things off is, what are you paying attention to these days?
What am I paying attention to? I am paying attention to people who are up to something new, and both the levers, the amplifiers of that, and the death traps of that. I pay attention to that a lot, because that's essentially the circles I'm in.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I love that. So Christian, so good to have you on the show. We were joking before we hit record about you're kind of the modern day Forrest Gump. You've had a very interesting life. You've lived in a lot of places, done a lot of things, and maybe that's why you're paying attention to the things you're paying attention to.
I think so.
But I'd love for our community to hear a little bit about your life, because I know it started as a refugee in Chile. So yeah, tell us a little bit kind of where you came from and how you got here.
The fast forward version of that will be a little bit confusing, so heads up, is that yes, I was actually born in Moscow in Russia. My mom's Russian, my dad's Chilean, so we moved to Chile when I was a baby. And then when I was 5, there was a massive military coup in Chile. My dad was put in a concentration camp along with tens of thousands of other people that were really imprisoned, tortured, killed. And then we were lucky enough for him to be released. We didn't know if he was going to make it out, but he was released. Sometimes those things were temporary. They would just follow you around and get you back in with all your friends. So we made it into a refugee facility that was overseen by the United Nations. And then from there, we got asylum in Germany. My mom was so shell-shocked, she wanted to go back home to Russia. So I went back to Russia. We're super poor. And then my dad got a job in Africa, in Mozambique, right after it got its independence. So this like a year and a half after, it was a brand new country, basically. Everything was new. So I sort of ended up being in 4 countries, changing 4 countries by age 7, which was very, very confusing. And that was accompanied by just all kinds of trouble, honestly. Just civil unrest, like military coup in Chile. I was in the hospital a lot, almost died in Russia because of the climate. There was a civil war that started in Mozambique like a year in. So luckily it was mostly outside of the capital, but we saw bombings, we saw all kinds of stuff like that. And then that continued with a little bit of a break for a happy childhood in Africa after my parents got divorced, and we end up back in the Soviet Union in the most sort of, unpleasant years of Soviet rule. I slept in the kitchen for years. We were starting over, basically. So I was raised from that age on, when I was 14, by a single mom. And it was very, very difficult. And then I got a really good education there, got a master's degree in economics. Of course, I spoke 4 languages because of the travels. Another thing happened, which is the fall of the Soviet Union. 91. So again, we see tanks in the streets and attempted military coup. So it just sort of seems to follow me wherever I go. I'm a little worried about Austin, Texas. So far, so good. And then sort of my fortunes changed because the fall of the Soviet Union, brought a lot of chaos, but also a lot of freedom. And I was able to, instead of going to what most of my peers were going into, banking, and so I went into music, which was very counterintuitive. And I was just very lucky, and I became one of the top pop stars in Russia by the end of year one. I was on national television, and then it just went up and up and up and up very fast. So small clubs, medium sort of places, radio, TV, magazines, sports arenas, And it all culminated, I guess, at a string of number one hits. And then I had this one massive one called Our Generation, and it caught the attention of the team of Boris Yeltsin, who was trying to get reelected and was actually trailing in the polls against the communists. So they used my song as the anthem for a lot of the ads. And of course, we campaigned for him. We went on tours, TV, radio. And so we had a very small part in keeping the communists out of power, which we did not want to happen very intensely. And that's basically the origin story. So this is all by my mid-20s, basically.
Wow, that's amazing. So kind of looking at, you're jumping from country to country, war-torn countries, running for your lives, parents getting divorced, all of this. Where's the kind of musicality, the creativity, like where's that kind of being birthed in you?
That came with a lot of layers, right? So singing was the first thing, right? And that was just there. Sometimes you just have a tone, and I had a good voice, and my parents, I loved singing. So I sang around the house all the time since I was like 4. So my parents would have visitors over and they would say, Christian, sing a song. And I would sing a song. They would actually, I think, stand me up on a chair or something like that, like a stage. That got reinforced when I was in Africa. I was part of this Chilean community. There's Chilean exiles, all of them, that all came to help this young country basically start over. And we had this very tight community, and one of the ladies organized this children's choir, and we would sing Latin American songs. It would sing Chilean and Brazilian and Colombian, the classics, right? And would play the maracas or the guitar. They would give me solos there. And that was the first time where I remember feeling that state of flow where I go, I can do this forever. It was just pure bliss, There's something there that really, really got me. And then that actually went dormant for a few years because of the divorce, because of the move to the Soviet Union. There was just no environment to develop that for a while. And it sort of woke up a little bit, but there was a second strand that was added, and I started breakdancing, it was the early 80s, and and this was underground. Like there was nothing, it's still behind the Iron Curtain. There's maybe 100 of us doing this, like freaks doing that in the Soviet Union. And I became really good at it. And then I go, and I sort of, all of that blended with my economics degree and my desire to understand how business works. So I would read all these biographies and books about the music industry. And I was like, okay, I need to choreograph. I need to make a show. It needs to be essentially something like a packageable thing. And eventually it all matured like midway through college, where I started taking it more seriously and sort of dabbling more seriously, still dabbling, but more seriously. So that's basically the origin story. And I sort of eventually came up with this very specific thing that I wanted. In a sense, it was a perfect blend of artistry, musicality, singing, dancing, and an understanding. How do you develop a signature, a brand, a personal brand? And I was aware of that because I studied this stuff. And of course, in the Soviet Union, no one knows how to do that, right? It's just not free market stuff. So all of that together became a very successful sort of project because it stood out immediately, right? In the land of mediocrity. So people were, by the end of year one, I had like 3 labels competing to sign me.
Yeah, this is so fascinating because you were kind of answering the question, but I was just thinking about, you're in a communist country where personal expression is not allowed. You're told what to do. This is how things work. And yet you have this little underground breakdancing crew growing. Yeah. You're figuring out how to create a brand and be a singer. And
Yeah.
But I also was thinking, like, I wonder, I mean, was there something in you too of just, there's something about creative expression and art that when things aren't well, when, whether it's family, whether it's a whole
Hmm.
country, whether it's some of the best music, the best art comes out of
Yeah.
pain,
Yeah.
out of loss, out of struggle, right? Was there some of that? I mean, just was this a way to kind of like cope with the situation with your friends, with your family, with, or were you even thinking of it in those terms, or was it just something?
I think it was more of a natural. I would say yes, right? And I can tell you even the roots of that. In the very beginning, I can trace specifically when my imagination went into sort of hyperdrive. When I landed in Mozambique, I was so confused. My dad tells me I was silent for like a year in social settings. I just wouldn't speak because I just couldn't, like what language, what people, and two things happened around that time is one, I became intensely interested in people, almost like you, out of necessity to fit in, you start to absorb and read human behavior at a heightened level. That's sort of my theory, right? And then the other thing is that I would escape. And I didn't have, of course, we didn't have electronics. We didn't have even TV. So I would escape into books. And I had literally a dream closet. So this massive closet in my bedroom. I can climb to the very top and I would had blankets and little lights and little candles there. It's like my little cave. And I would read all these books for hours on end. And so basically my imagination, I would escape into my imagination, right? I would imagine things. And I did it for a long time. And I think that developed this creative muscle of imagining something that's not there yet and being sort of deeply in touch with the human condition. And when I start writing songs, when I wrote a love song, for example, it just touched people because I can express something that people were feeling. When I even wrote the pop songs, I would touch people because people wanted, it was almost like this fresh stream of music that was decidedly not un-Soviet and celebrating life. And, the song that Yeltsin's campaign used was called Our Generation. So it was sort of with an edge of new times to come. And it captured literally the pulse of a generation. So somehow I was able to just, resonate. And then when I wrote something, it resonated with others. It was like a chain reaction.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like in your growing up years, the dream closet, the imagination, it was like you're actually like dreaming about hope. You're dreaming about a
Hmm.
better future. And then when you had the opportunity to actually write these songs
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
express yourself, it was like it was already in there. It was already in your
Yes.
soul, in your heart, in your mind. Like, hey, there could be a
Yeah.
better
Yeah.
day, a better world, a better. And obviously that resonated with people, as you said. I can only imagine them. I can't even imagine actually living in war torn Russia and all these places. Now, as you were getting kind of older, and you're looking at, getting economics degrees and building a business, like where did those seeds of that come from? I mean, was there a sense of like, I need to have a new start, this can't be my life? I mean, what were you kind of taking with you as you went through all these experiences as a young kid and moving around, and just wars all around you and chaos
Yeah.
around you? Like what was kind of like stirring in your soul?
I think part of it is escaping from things and then being attracted to other things.
Hmm.
And I think we're all either escaping something or pulled towards something, right? A combination of those things. And what I wanted to escape is a life of mediocrity. I just really, really didn't like the Soviet Union, what it did to people,
Hmm.
culturally and personally. And it was very primal. It was one of those things. I was like, no way, this is my life. Right? So part of it was that is escaping mediocrity and escaping conformity. Like, these grayness. People settle for something so under their potential in mass. So that's one thing. The other part, I think, was this pull of I was much more American in culture, I think, than Russian or Chilean, because I would watch TV and I go, driving these cars, they have all this abundance, they have all these choices, and I don't have those choices, and I wanna know how it feels. And again, it's imagination, right? So it's almost like I tuned into a frequency of entrepreneurship while behind the Iron Curtain, while living in one of the poorest countries in the world. And I would just imagine and I would think and, think deeply, obsess over these ideas. And then after I sort of developed a little bit more of more maturity, I'll start studying biographies of great people and artists of all kinds and what kind of character it took. the encounters they had and what were the catalysts for success. So I would really obsess over these things. I would just dive into these lives, okay, right, these journeys, and then start to recognize patterns that would be similar in my life. So it's just that pull was definitely there. And like you can see, people would go, who is this guy, right? For example, I wanted to put a show together, not just singing and dancing, right? So I'd recruited some fellow breakdancers. And at the time, it was like completely underground. There was no modern sort of pop dancing anywhere. It just doesn't exist. So I was like, okay, I'm going to take some street dancers. First of all, they have some really cool skills, some moves that people don't see often. Second, but they're completely unpolished. They're not professionals. They're improvisers. So I want to create a choreography that is a blend of breakdancing and something else. And at the time, sort of the big things were Janet Jackson, Michael Jackson, that kind of dancing was very sophisticated, but it was all rooted in street dancing. So I started choreographing these things and I was training these guys. And of course, I had to like fire 2/3, maybe 3/4 of the people that wanted to do this because they just didn't have the discipline. But I had that vision. And, I would basically, first job I got, I had 3 or 4 songs and I would rehearse those songs with my crew for 6 months, 4 songs, until it was so good that it was irresistible. It was undeniable, right? And we had wardrobe stuff, and like I treated it as something like that. So when we went on our first audition to there's like 3 clubs in the whole city. There's this one mega club that popped up, and everybody was there, like all of the VIPs were there. And we auditioned there, and we were hired on the spot. We worked there for 6 months. And so those are the steps, and the layers that created that thing.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like you had, a lot of just entrepreneurial kind of spirit already in you and just, willing to step out and try things. And, even if it fails or I don't even know what I'm doing, there's no playbook for this.
No,
right?
Not at all.
Yeah. I mean, it is interesting, like going back to what you're saying about culture and the pop culture, living in another country, but how influential, especially, American pop culture was in the 80s.
Yeah.
And, with TV and radio and MTV and all that, how that infused, so many other cultures, like, people
massive. Yeah.
living in Africa wearing, Nike t-shirts and Michael Jackson t-shirts and, all that kind of stuff. That was probably, handed out at some humanitarian thing or whatever, but,
Sure.
but always this kind of like thing of like, oh, this magical place that, seems so far away and, where all the music comes from and all that. Seems like a little bit of that was it getting into you, but talk us through a little bit of like, so eventually, I mean, you ended up in the States, and, it seemed like you had like a dream to get here somehow. What was kind of the journey to that? Like, what happened after kind of your pop career was?
It's fascinating. Culturally, I was very American, but because I had this, significant career in Russia, I wasn't really intending to move to the States. I just married an American, my wife Deb, and she also has she was a creative vibes, creative dimensions. She was a theater major. She worked for MTV and VH1, so she knew both the creative and the management part of show business really well. I mean, and actually, one of the things that attracted me to her is that she's worked with such big stars that I was not a big star. And to me, that was actually quite significant because when you're in a place where across 15 different countries, most young girls know who you are, and then you actually don't know if they're dating you for the persona or the person, it gets real confusing. So when I met her at a conference in LA, actually, and I was like, she has no idea she doesn't care, but she's awesome, right? Yeah. And to me, that was like a huge thing. So she moved to Russia to be with me, and we had 2 daughters there, and I had a daughter from a previous relationship. And we were basically going to stay, but her health got really terrible because of the climate. So I had this dilemma of, okay, I can see her quality of life deteriorating, and I just can't imagine projecting that forward 20 years. I just can't live with that. So we have to go. And if we go, I'm going to a place that I admire from afar, but no one knows or cares who I am. So I'm basically starting over, right? Mm-hmm. So that was basically the move. And yeah, it was fantastic. I'm really grateful to be here. I've been a citizen for a long time now. We've started 3 different businesses, 2 nonprofits here. Some of them went bust. Some of them didn't. But I just love the spirit of America. I wrote a book about it that I just released called Little Book of Big Reasons to Love America. Sort of the immigrant's perspective. You can find it on Amazon. Yeah, but it's really cool that all of those experiences, and they all worked in America, not just in Russia, not just in the third world. And I was able to do really cool stuff here. So one of the things that I do now is high performance coaching. Is basically, hey, if you want to create something new, I know what it takes. I know how hard it is, and I'll teach you how to survive the dips and how to maximize your creativity so that you live creatively every day of your life. And if you live creatively every day of your life and not in stress and anxiety permanently, which is most people, you're able to do just extraordinary things with your life. I really believe that, and I have a passion for that, right? Because I come from a place with no possibility, and I look at people here in the land of possibility, sort of not making bold, ambitious, creative moves. And I go, seriously? Come on now.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, so I'm really glad I could chat with you because I think it's really helpful to have I hate to say outsider's perspective, but for a lot of years, obviously you were outside
Yeah,
looking in, and then
I
you
was.
move into a place and it's like, why is everyone complaining? Why is everyone
That's exactly it.
saying, we can't do this. This is impossible. And this is too hard. And this place
Yeah.
stinks. And, why are we
Yeah.
here? And you're going like, are you kidding me? Like, this is insane. So I'm glad you mentioned your book because I wanted to hear just a little bit of, it sounds like it's, some life lessons and some little bit of
Yeah.
your story and memoir and things. But what were some of the kind of lessons, as you were kind of like putting this book together and putting your thoughts down? What were some things that you were seeing or things that you were like, hey, this is what I want to tell other people. Like, here's what's possible. Here's what I learned. Give us a few of those.
So it's sort of an eclectic book. If and when you get the book, you'll see that this is done by an artist, right? Because
Mhm.
it just defies genres.
Sure.
It's both almost like a memoir, but it's really not a memoir because it's targeted towards something very specific. And it has illustrations from my personal archives, and it has QR codes for videos that you can watch and stuff like that. It's very eclectic. But the thrust of what happened, or how this thing came together, is that I would be so excited about almost like this constellation of circumstances and amplifiers of human flourishing that were present in America at the same time in a very unique combination. I can list, I have 10 chapters, 10 reasons, but I can say, for example, acceptance of immigrants. You are an American, even if you have an accent, even if you were born somewhere else. Freedom, entrepreneurship, faith, the faith sort of layer, the Protestant work ethic, the philanthropic quality of people. This is the most generous country in the world by far. The pursuit of happiness, almost like an ethos that actually took. It's not just something somebody wrote it down. So I basically kept saying those things to my wife. Yeah, look at this. This is special. Look at that. This is special. And she would go, wow, that's really insightful. And then eventually she was like, you need to write these things down, especially at a time where it's almost, sometimes it's a dirty word to say, I love America. There's pushback, and there are reasons for that. So I don't omit any of the sort of national sins of America. I was actually a recipient of one of those. My dad was in a concentration camp because of a coup that the CIA sponsored, the classic American meddling in foreign affairs. So I'm very aware, like, trust me, I'm aware. Okay.
Right. Yeah. It's not
I'm,
perfect
I'm,
place.
I'm on the receiving end
Yeah.
of that. But that's not the point. The point is, what I love about America is that it's very, very flawed, very messy, and people don't hide it. We discuss the dirty laundry. We want to get better. It's very aspirational. It's very much moving forward. And I find that to be extraordinarily refreshing and not normal. And to this day, and I think the biggest thing that people don't have perspective, because if you just grew up in freedom, you take it for granted, right? Is that today, not 100 years ago, today, 72% of the population on the planet lives under some sort of authoritarian regime. Literally, it's like 5.8 billion, something like that. So it is objectively, statistically rare to find what we find here. Even compared to what we call the free world, the Western world, that is relatively free, it's actually less free than America. So all of that is almost like this. The book is this layered cake of insights. There's a lot of substance there, but you can read it in an afternoon because I wanted to compress it so that you can get the gist of it. It's not like you're reading a lecture or something like that, and there's all kinds of it's peppered with these illustrations, these crazy stories that I've lived through, 3 lifetimes in 1 lifetime.
Well, I think it's so beautiful that you could put it on into a book and put it down because I think in this moment, as we're 2025, it's good to have someone's perspective that maybe didn't grow up here or didn't,
Yeah.
wasn't raised here and really takes things for granted. I think that's the reality of it too. Is my wife is her folks are from the Netherlands originally, both her mom and dad, and immigrated over here, 10 kids, no money, but basically because of a famine and opportunity in the 50s, and just
Yeah.
realized like they don't complain like other people can complain,
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, they're just like, well, what's the alternative? Die in a famine or die from some
Yeah,
crazy
exactly.
government or lack of opportunity or whatever. So it's like sometimes it is perspective, right? It's
Yeah.
having other stories to tell. And that's why I love art because I think you have so many diverse people telling diverse stories from their experiences and it
Yes.
resonates and it kind of reminds you again like especially like I imagine reading this book like the days where you feel like giving up and the days you feel like this is too hard or this isn't worth it or
Yeah.
to hear someone's story to go like hey just keep going like
Yeah.
it's much better than you realize like
Yes.
and if
That that
I can go through this you can keep on
that is
going.
exactly that what you said that right there. I think we are so addicted to certainty. And basically a lot of what I do now, even when I coach people, is helping them understand how to manage, how to actually take certainty as an advantage, uncertainty rather, right? And then create something new. And it's very hard. It's really primal for us to avoid suffering,
Yep.
and it's really primal for us to avoid uncertainty.
Sure.
So, but I think I love artists because artists have this almost extra gene of uncertainty. I'm okay as long as I can create something new,
Mm,
and I'm willing to endure suffering for it. If write a book, write a song, paint, film, that kind of thing.
mhm,
And I really love that quality in me, and also I like that quality in people. And I think everybody's creative, and we're just educated out of it
mm, yep.
by life, by school, by all kinds of things, right? But everybody's creative, and I think creativity it's your birthright. And
Mm.
if you learn how to mine that for treasure, I mean, you can have an amazing life.
Yeah. So what, I mean, obviously you've coached a lot of, high performers and creative people and business people. But how about for you? Like what personally has helped you like stay resilient? Cause obviously things haven't been perfect. You mentioned a few things failed
Yeah.
and, didn't work out. But yeah, what are some like practices or things that you do that kind of help you keep going?
Well, I think the ability to deep learn, that's one thing that I talk about a lot. And that's expressed usually in some form of apprenticeship, right? This is a form of learning that is almost extinct in the West. I
Mm,
don't know if you've thought about this, but for tens of thousands of years, that's how people learn
mm,
until the Industrial Revolution, right? Where they start essentially, it's much more scalable, more efficient. So it creates a lot of wealth and a lot of prosperity, a lot of scale, but you lose depth and you lose mastery. And that's essentially the natural MO of how people learn in the West today. So what what I've learned is to attach myself to people that coach me as an apprentice, not as advisors. They're not my advisors. They're my disciplers. They're masters of something that I want to master and I want to cling to them. It's a different kind of learning. It's immersive learning, it's deep learning. And that's part of the reason why I coach is that I realize that even if you are at the top 1% in something, you always have these flat sides that can actually do you in, like completely stop you. You hit a wall and you won't be able to go further. And that was sort of my situation in when I was at the top of my music career. I literally had the biggest hit I've ever had. I had a string of them, and I was clinically depressed, because of these character flaws in completely different areas that had nothing to do with music. Now they're caught up with me, and I can't even do the thing that I gave everything up for well. So I find this guy, and he's this Canadian missionary. And somehow I saw in him like a Mr. Miyagi type, right? I'm
mm,
like, this guy can see around corners compared to me in these areas. And I'm gonna do anything I can to be around him and to learn from him. And I'm literally super accomplished. Like I'm literally entertaining millions of people. And I cling to him and I go, teach me. And I think that's the wisest thing I've ever done because there were these missing parts. So, and he did. He taught me and it just changed the trajectory of my life. That's one, deep learning. That's why I think everybody needs a coach. That's why I coach. That's why I was coached and I am coached still. Is it's a very different and accelerated way, the deeper way of progressing. So it's like comparing walking to taking a bike to taking an airplane. So it just accelerates. And if you think about it, yeah, it requires a lot of attention, a lot of intentionality, but you can do in 2 years what you could have done otherwise in 10 years, and sometimes maybe never. So it's one piece I would say that's huge. The other one is just the ability to every day get yourself into a very creative space. And in America, that's very difficult because of the complexities, the tensions, anxiety, and busyness, the ethos of workaholism. It just drains creativity out of people. And then you lose, long term, you lose in a big way. So it's techniques and lifestyle changes that will create this daily overflowing with creativity and joy and clarity type of state of being. And then, of course, that just transforms the way that your performance levels, right? In everything, by the way, right? So that's another piece. I would say community is another one. Having a circle of people who are sort of in that same place of building something new. And then, it's rough. Like, you want to build anything new, you have to have people around you who you can go to and say, man, it's a terrible, terrible week. And they can just not only nod and understand you, but really understand you because they're in it also. And then next week you take care of them, So I think community is a big deal. That's why, we have cohorts when we help people. I mean, I can speak for hours on this, obviously, but these are just some of the top things.
Oh, no, I think you're tapping into something when it comes to community cohorts. It seems like I'm even learning now, even in higher education, they're doing cohort models.
Exactly.
It's like learning from each other, not just
Yes.
lecturer who just imparts information.
Yeah.
And it's funny because that's such a American, modern thing. I mean, if you look at culture, you look at philosophers back in the day, look at
that's exactly it. Yeah.
Jesus and it was a community of people learning from each other.
Always. It was always apprenticeship. It was never a post-industrial conveyor belt style type of learning.
Top down.
Never.
Yep. And actually, you don't learn very much if it's just do the, I'm the master, just do it. It's like, no, you do it by immersing yourself, having conversation, watching, observing. There's a whole different, and I love what you said too, just about having a community when things aren't going well, because as you interact with other people, you realize, oh, they're going through the same thing.
Totally.
I just talked to someone the other day and they're just talking about the imposter syndrome, which is anyone that's written anything, created anything, it's ever
100%.
stood on a stage and spoke, whatever. Like everyone acts like, oh, everyone's so confident. You've done this a million times. Every time you get on a stage, you're like, why am I doing this? I should just end my life right now.
Exactly.
What do I have to say? These like,
totally.
Right. But then you get around other people and they go like, oh, you too. Yeah, that's the world we live in, Oh, you've tried to write a song. Oh, you've tried to write a book. Oh, you've tried to, like we all think we're phonies and we all think we're terrible, even if we've done it a million times,
And it's better to learn how to lean into it. But I would say 90% of people, they do not lean into it. They just contract. And to me, that's like the biggest tragedy in the human experience. It is the biggest tragedy that you would not lean into these hard things that are so deeply human and universal and just live a life that is really more safe, more certain, infinitely less creative. And I feel like you owe it to us to step into your creativity and do something boldly and just figure out how to navigate that.
I imagine you've probably read some Stephen Pressfield,
I love Stephen Pressfield.
War of Art, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
It's funny because he'd always say like, actually the resistance, the challenges we have is actually the sign that we're on to something good. Like the suffering, the hesitation, the I'm a phony, this is really difficult, like follow that. He actually kind of uses the, because we always think like, unless it's easy, then that means if it's easy, then I'm on the right track. And he's like, no. He's like, you're probably on the right track by doing doing the hard thing, doing the difficult thing. Like you have a story you have to tell and yeah, it's not going to be easy, but that's exactly where you need to be, and again, you're onto something. I mean, you lived in war-torn Russia and Africa and everywhere else. It's like, we're very soft in America. I mean, any challenge, any, suffering, like we just don't understand. I mean, my grandparents lived through World War II and my grandfather was a World War II test pilot and lived through the Depression and and it's like, we just kind of forget, like there were times in history where they were way more difficult than they are now. And so any little blip on the radar, any little speed bump, we're like, oh, I'm out, I'm done. This is too hard, So it's good but it's also good to go like, yeah, the best stuff we're doing is always hard stuff. It's the most important things we're doing or should be doing or called to do is usually the hard stuff.
Yeah. In fact, I would say, when people go, well, of course you are this way because you lived through this, of course, but I can't replicate that. But you actually can, all right? And the way I explain it to people is that you can create a very conscious daily effort, and I say daily, of what I call constructive suffering. And it's basically there's a portion of your day that you don't do something that is comfortable, you do something that would stretch you. But it has to be every day. And that can develop, I mean, and literally, you don't have to live through World War II or be in a civil war or something to actually develop the same exact muscles. It's just you you can create those same exact muscles even if you grew up in the middle class, relatively painless childhood, just by adopting a certain lifestyle and some strategies for that. And it's remarkable how well it works, basically, because you could build this anti-fragility, this expansion. That's why my program is called exponential, right? It's this growing mindset by practicing something every day, and it's this little incremental 1% improvements every day will change your life forever.
I love that. Yeah, putting yourself in not harm's way, but putting yourself in difficult situations isn't the worst thing. I mean,
No, no,
yeah, and
because it's constructive. It's to build something.
yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know.
I mean, it's funny that you're saying this because I think a lot of the things that we do actually are difficult, but we don't realize it in the moment. I mean, I go to the gym and it's like, yeah, everything's so stinking heavy. Like if it was a lot lighter, I'd
Yeah,
want to go
yeah.
all the time. But I'm like, yeah, it's painful and you're sore afterwards. And even trying to eat right, it's like, yeah, this doesn't always taste good, but I know it's good for me, or whatever it is. Like just doing
That's
kind
right.
of the thing that,
Yeah.
it doesn't come natural. Because if we just did what's natural, then I mean, we'd be a mess. Like we would just never get
Oh,
off the
oh,
couch,
absolutely.
just ice cream and Netflix, for the rest of our lives. But yeah, I mean, it requires sacrifice. It requires courage. It requires effort. But we never look back and go, oh, I wish I wouldn't have done that. We always look back and go, man, I'm so glad I got up at 5 in the morning to write my memoir or 5 in the morning
Yes.
to make that music or, whatever. We look back and go, yeah, that was something that changed me in the process, that because I didn't think I could do it.
You never regret that. No.
No, no. Well, Christian, this has been so good. You have such an interesting life and you've been through some difficult experiences, but you've also had some great successes. Tell us a little bit like where can people find you? If they want to work with you, what can they expect or how would they go about doing that? Yeah, what should they, where can they find your book, all that good stuff?
So if you're listening to this and you go, man, this is really good information, but I'm not ready for something decisive, but I'd like to get more of that just to feed my brain, my heart. Go to christianrayflores.com. That's my Substack. That's my newsletter. And I love that place. I think we have almost 20,000 now subscribers. And I really put my heart into it because I want to share with as many people as possible the most valuable stuff I find, things that I'm thinking of, podcasts that I go on, books that I read, videos that I create, all kinds of stuff. So that's basically the place. And there's 2 emails that go out. One on Sunday is free. The one on Wednesday is for people who decide to contribute a little bit to our work, right?
Mhm.
For the price of a latte a month, you get some really good stuff. So that's probably the best place for somebody who just feels like, okay, these are some good insights. I want more. If you are in a place where you go, okay, I'm really ready for decisive action, and the pain of staying the same is more than the pain of changing, go to my coaching website. Would love to help you. It's exponential.life and it's spelled without the E. So it just starts with an X, exponential.life. You can find a really cool assessment there that I basically just give away for free that we developed based on a lot of research that it takes about maybe 7-8 minutes to complete, like 40 questions. And it gives you a really good insight into the most important dimensions of life that are that are the most important for your long-term flourishing, right? You get a report in your inbox and it's absolutely free. So you can find it there. It's called the Exponential Scorecard.
Well, Chris, that sounds amazing. And thank you for sharing your wisdom. Thank you for being generous with our community and yeah, sharing your story. I know it's going to inspire a lot of people. I know you've helped a lot of people today. So thank you so much for coming on the show.
Ryan, super grateful for the opportunity.
My pleasure.